The latest update on Alex Murdaugh is that he has been moved into a protective custody unit inside one of the prisons in the South Carolina Department of Corrections. I can tell you exactly what a day in the life of Alex Murdaugh is going to be, what his day-to-day schedule is, and exactly how everything works in protective custody inside the South Carolina State Prison. How am I able to do that? Well, not only have I served 10 years in the South Carolina Department of Corrections, and I have now been out free for just barely over a year now, but I've also been to a protective custody wing inside one of the South Carolina prisons. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute, so you're saying you've been on protective custody when you were in prison? And, yeah, I was terrified. No, I'm just kidding. I wasn't in the protective custody unit because I was on protective custody. Let me explain. When I got released from prison, it was still within the time frame that a lot of COVID-19 protocol was in place for these prisons. And one of those protocols was that any inmate and any group of inmates, they usually release you in like a kind of a big group for the whole month, whatever month you're being released. They'll have a big group of you, and those inmates have to be quarantined at that time. They had to be quarantined for 14 days before they were allowed to be released back into the public. So 14 days prior to the first day of that month that everyone was going to be released, they would take that whole group, round them up, and they would take them to a special part of the prison to be quarantined away from the rest of the population. That part of the prison happened to be protective custody. So for 2 weeks straight, I got an inside look into what the schedule, the day-to-day life, and just what goes on in these protective custody units. And I was even around inmates who were on protective custody. See, what they did is they would bring us into the unit, and the bottom floor, there's 2 floors. They call them tiers, bottom tier and top tier. The bottom tier was reserved for us. All the cells were empty, and they put us in those cells. And then the top tier, that was reserved for the inmates who were actually on protective custody. So what they would do is they would split kind of the activity time, the daily activity time in half, the first half going to the protective custody inmates, and then they'd lock them back in their cells because they're on protective custody. And the other half of the day, they would allow that time to us, the people who were going home. So, now that that's cleared up, let's talk Alex Murdaugh, who is in one of these exact protective custody wings in one of these cell blocks that's designated for those inmates, and let's talk about what happens there. How are the inmates? What goes on? What are they able to do? What are they able to not do? And what is the, hour by hour schedule in there? Let's start with just the routine, the schedule for the day-to-day. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, those are the days that they're able to come out and shower. There are usually 4 showers on the bottom tier and then 4 showers on the top tier. These are individual one-man showers. Inmates do not shower together in South Carolina state prisons, so they will not be showering together. As for the phones that inmates are able to use to make calls, collect calls to whoever they're calling on the outside, there's usually about 5 to 8 phones hooked and installed into the wall. So, they'll be able to use the phone during the time that they're allowed out of their cell, pretty much whenever. As for the time that they're allowed out of their cell, so about 5 to 6 a.m., they'll bring breakfast around. They don't allow these inmates to go out to the cafeteria that's on that prison yard. They're going to bring a cart in with styrofoam trays that have the breakfast on there, and they do this for every meal, not just breakfast. So they'll bring breakfast about 5 to 6 a.m., and then they'll do shift change about 7 to 8 a.m. So usually about 8:30 a.m., they will go around and unlock the doors of all the inmates who are on protective custody in that unit. So a lot of people think of protective custody. They're like, okay, this guy's in a cell all day. He's locked in there. He never gets out. He never gets to talk to other inmates. He never gets to be around other inmates. He's all by himself. Well, that's just simply not true. And even from the report, the official report released by South Carolina Department of Corrections, he's going to be in there with at least 28 other inmates. They're not going to keep these guys in their cell their whole time. They didn't do anything wrong. They did something wrong. That's why they're in prison. But once you get to prison, they haven't done anything wrong. They're just on protective custody. They're at a high risk for danger to happen to them and come their way. And so they are in a protected unit. They haven't caused any trouble. So they're still going to get their privileges. They're going to be allowed to come out and they're going to be able to mingle. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. So he will be able to mingle with these other inmates. So about 8:30, he'll come out. There's a count time. This is the time where they go around and count all the inmates in that unit. And they do this in every unit on the whole prison yard at all the prisons at the same time. Because they do this to make sure no one's escaped and stuff like that. So there will be a count time where everyone will have to report to their cells at that time. But other than that, that's the only real break in this free roaming activity time. You can call it, we call it rec time, recreation time. Just those little quick, maybe 5-10 minute breaks to do what the institution has to do. There will be another chow time, we call it, at 12 o'clock. This is lunch, anywhere from 12 to 1 o'clock. They'll bring another cart around with all the trays. You'll get lunch. And again, at usually anywhere from 4 to 5 p.m., you'll get dinner. There's another count time at 3. So this is usually when they lock down in the protective custody units. Lockdown means just put all the inmates, hey, the fun time's over, buddy. Get back in your cell. We're locking the doors. It's basically what that is. So generally about 8 to 8:30 all the way till about 3:30 p.m. They'll be allowed to be out there in this open common area. They'll mingle with each other. They can play chess. You can get chess boards and chess pieces on the commissary. You can play cards, poker, spades, any card game you like. You can buy cards on the commissary. You can do whatever you want. There's usually about 4 or more TVs, big flat screen TVs in these units that get, they don't get cable, but they get your basic channels. That's enough to entertain you and pass your time. And these inmates will watch these TVs. They'll get on the phones. They'll play cards. They'll gamble. We know Alex Murdaugh likes to gamble. They'll mingle. They'll talk. They'll rub elbows. They'll make friends. He's going to be able to do all that. And because of that, yes, could he still be hurt? Could he still be at risk of being in danger? Could someone do something to him? Yeah, of course. It's not very likely to happen because, yes, these inmates, I can reach out and touch you. I can physically harm you, but we're all on protective custody. And if I do something to you and I'm the one who started this trouble, the officers are going to take me and probably take me out of protective custody for causing and stirring up trouble. And I don't want to be off protective custody because I'm already scared. That's why I'm here in the first place. So that's going to be the incentive to prevent these inmates from really getting into fights with each other, although it does happen. There's always exceptions. There's always, 1 in 1,000 chances that things happen. But it's probably not going to happen in these protective custody units. Now, all this equates to essentially they get the same privileges as any other inmate who's in general population. They get all those same privileges, and they get a much higher or rather a much lower likelihood of danger and physical violence coming their way. And it almost, of course, compared to the outside life, it's not living the good life, but if you got to be in prison, you're living about as good a life as you can. Now, the one issue here is, and I think this might really bother Alex Murdaugh, the only difference here, if you consider, hey, we get all the same privileges and we get none of the violence, why would I ever want to leave protective custody, right? Well, the reason he probably will is because the one difference there, the big difference between protective custody and the general population, Alex isn't really going to be able to get his hands on things like prison wine, which is rampant. It's everywhere in general population. Tobacco, weed, cocaine, pills, opiates, anything you want, it's over there in general population. Cell phones, you want a smartphone? They got iPhones over there. They have chargers. They have pocket knives bought from Walmart that are smuggled in. They have everything, lighters. They have everything over there. They don't have that. That's the one thing they don't have in protective custody. And the reason for that is it's just harder to access, and it's a higher risk for these inmates who have it, who are in general population, to be able to smuggle it over there. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. Is it practical and probable? If you're an inmate, is it very easy to do? No, it's not. So it's going to be rare that you see stuff like that make it over there. If he wants to do all that, and let me tell you, somebody who has a life sentence, why would he care if he does drugs or like anything? Like, why not do drugs? I'm just being honest. At that point, your life is over. You're in prison forever. Why not drink? Why not smoke cigarettes? Why not get high? Why not find a way to escape? I mean, isn't that the logical, practical thing he's probably going to do? I would say so, but again, that's just my opinion. So if he wants to do all that and he wants to get involved in all that, and if he wants to get on a cell phone, this guy's pretty vain from what it seems like. He might want to get on YouTube and watch all these videos about him. He can do that if he goes over there to general population and gets a cell phone. So you make your own conclusion. Do you think he will? Do you think he won't? Do you think that's enough motivation for him to go in front of this review board? These inmates who are on protective custody, every 6 months they go in front of the staff. They're at this big table. It's called a review board, and they look at your case. They look at what is your preference? Do you want to stay? Do you not want to stay? How much? How high is the risk of danger coming your way if we put you back? Lots of things, and they review and they decide, hey, do you still need protective custody or do you not? What if everyone forgets about this man in a year? They're going to take him off of there, especially if he's like, hey, I want to come off, please. He's going to come off of protective custody. And he could go over there to general population, and he could get a cell phone, and he can get anything he wants. So it could really take a major turn there. What do you think he'll do? Let me know your opinion in the comments. I hope this was informative and gave you a lot of insight. No shock value here, just giving you the facts and the information from someone who's experienced it and has been there and lived and breathed it himself. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe if you haven't already, because I do these videos all the time, and I will be back soon with another.